My mom was always very cautious of the bad things that could happen to her children. She would take all three of us, my brother, sister, and I, to school in the morning, as she worked very close to the same time school started. I had been begging to bike to school since I got a new bike for my birthday just a few months earlier, and finally she agreed. I was in grade 7, so 12 or 13 years old at the time, and I was a little girl. My school was a 2 to 3 minute drive, and around a 10 to 15 minute bike ride. I was eager to ride my new bike to school, as I had also gotten a new helmet and bike lock to go with it. The school started at 8:30 to 9ish, so I would leave at around 8. I liked to hang out in the yard with my friends before school started, so I would always leave a little bit earlier. The route to school was pretty much one straight line down one main road in my city. Now it's 8 o'clock in the morning, so it's relatively bright outside, and again I'm on a well-populated main road right around the time everyone is supposed to be heading to work and or school. I'm about halfway to school at this point, and I decide to cross the street. Not at a crosswalk or traffic light, mind you, just kind of jaywalking or jay-biking, if you will. As I'm stopped in someone's driveway, looking both ways to cross quickly, I notice a black car pull up to my left and park right along the side of the road. It's a 2-door Honda Civic type looking car from what I can remember. I'm 21 years old currently, so it was a while ago, and all of the windows were tinted. I didn't think much of it. The only thing that crossed my mind was that maybe I was blocking them from getting into their driveway, so I continued on trying to quickly cross the street. From the corner of my eye, though, I see a man, dressed in all black with his hood pulled up to hide his face, get out of the driver's side. He walked around the back of the car to the passenger side, and before I even had the chance to realize what was happening, he had pulled open the passenger side door and was grabbing me by my arm off my bike, trying to force me into his car. For what felt like forever, it was like every car on this entire street had disappeared, and any sign of help was completely gone. One of the busiest streets in my city felt like a gravel road in the middle of nowhere, with nothing to be seen for miles. It also felt like one of those awful nightmares, where you keep trying to scream but nothing ever comes out, so you're just silently suffering until you finally wake up. But this was real. I really couldn't scream. I can't explain that feeling any better than a nightmare, but never being able to wake up. These things just didn't happen in my city, so I wasn't prepared for what to do in a situation like this. I did the first thing that came to my mind. I aimed for his nuts. I shifted my weight to my right leg and kicked as hard as I possibly could with my left. I managed to land one solid kick, which I recall actually hurt my ankle quite a lot, so I can only imagine what it felt like on the receiving end. Instantly, he let go. I didn't even look before I crossed the street, biking away as fast as I possibly could. I remember trying to turn around to get a license plate, but my eyes were too watery from the tears streaming from them, and it still felt like making any noise was impossible. I knew my mom would have been at work by now, so I just continued biking to school, silently crying the entire way. I pulled into the schoolyard and dropped my bike. I didn't care to lock it or ride it anywhere again, frankly. My school's front door was locked 24/7, and you had to ring a doorbell to get in, so I did exactly that. The secretary kindly reminded me that I still had time to play outside before class started, and that's when I was finally able to speak again. "I need to call my mom," I screamed. The door opened instantly. I explained what had happened to the secretary, then the principal, my mom, and finally the police, who I had refused to talk to until I spoke with my mom first. The police arrived at the school shortly and took my statement. Then I went into the station after school to make another with my mom. A business across the street from where it happened had video surveillance, but it only captured the bottom 6 inches of the guy's car pulling up, his footsteps around the back of his car, and the car pulling away shortly after. Basically no solid leads on who this prick was or is. It turns out, the same guy with the same body and car description went on to attempt to kidnap 3 other girls, but he was still never caught. I don't really believe in a god, but I do pray that he was and is never successful. I grew up in Texas. I still live here along with my family, who will also be mentioned in this story. When the 2007 recession hit, my father lost his job. It was a management job that paid quite well. We lived in a comfortable but slightly country area right outside of Lockhart, Texas. Now with our income at a halt, we lost our home and we had to move away. Luckily, my parents had found a trailer park with a 2-bedroom for rent, a little cramped for our family of 5, but at the time we had no other choice. The man we rented from was crooked for other reasons, but he's not the disturbed landlord this story revolves around. We lived in that trailer for a few years before needing to move out for reasons I was too young to remember. I was 11 years old when my parents began house hunting again. Down the road from the trailer park was a little cul-de-sac of land. There was a business in the center of this land called Why Not Party House. It was a bar or some kind of wannabe club, I suppose. Considering I was a child, I never entered the building. There were a few houses and trailers scattered around different parts, all within this secluded circle. It just so happened that a worn-down looking trailer was up for rent. The man renting it, Mr. Dahl, was an elderly man who couldn't have been any younger than 65. A few things to note about this trailer. It had old stone steps leading right up to the front door. There was a bunk bed in one of the bedrooms, and a somewhat functioning air hockey table. The master bedroom had a queen-sized bed, and there was carpet in the kitchen, which I always found strange. The back door was nailed shut and completely unusable. If that wasn't enough to make you say nope already, let me say it also had quite a bit of a mice problem. My family is working class, my mother is disabled, and with my father out of work, we relied completely on her disability check. We had no choice but to rent out this trailer or be homeless. The entire deal was strange, and honestly, sad this was the position we were in, but my parents rented out this trailer on the agreement of words only. There was no official lease that was signed, nor was there any sort of legal documentation that proved we were renting from this man. Before we moved in, Mr. Dahl took it upon himself to build a new deck for us, to replace those old steps. He even built a little picnic table for us to sit outside together. As a child, it completely blew my mind. This stranger could be so kind to craft these things without being asked or wanting any money. It seemed like an act of pure kindness. I mean, a bad person would never do that sort of thing, right? The first few weeks of renting from him went by without a hitch. The master bedroom had no light bulbs, and we weren't there long enough to change them, so my family and I all slept in the living room. Something about the bedroom with bunk beds seemed scary to me. I'm not sure how my brothers felt about it, but neither of them ever slept in there either. As I mentioned previously, we relied completely on my mother's disability. This meant that sometimes we were late on rent and had to pay the late fees. Other than that, Mr. Dahl would usually be very understanding about everything, despite being a little bit irritated. My mother's check hit every first of the month, which is also the month for bills. Her, my father, and my older brother got into the car and drove into the city to take care of some bills and get a money order for rent. I was left alone in the trailer with my oldest brother. It was a time when we had no internet or cable, just VHS movies lying around. I was in the hallway. Come to find out, the trailer was flipped and the front door was the one nailed shut after all, playing with my Wii. Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess to be exact. Something I need you all to note. We had no keys to this trailer. The only person with a set of keys was Mr. Doll. So that meant we were unable to ever lock the trailer whenever we left. As I was playing my game, right in front of the door that was locked, I saw the knob begin to turn. No knocking at all. The knob jiggled, and our landlord tried to pry the door open twice, but was unable to do so successfully. I just froze and realized it was him. He must have assumed no one was home because the car was gone, but the door was locked, and I thought I was fine to continue playing my game. 11-year-old brain after all. My brother was in the living room, and we both heard this noise. At first, I thought it was a dog barking, and my brother heard it too. But the longer we listened, we realized it wasn't an animal, but the sound of people yelling. My brother went over to the front door to investigate the noises, and me being a small scared child, I followed right behind him, of course. Both of my parents were standing out in the yard. My mother was furiously shouting at our landlord, who was sitting in a farming vehicle. I'm not sure what the name of it was. I just remember it had a very long piece attached to it. She was visibly angry, and her voice was laced with rage. My father was yelling at him too, but it was so long ago that I don't remember exactly what was being said. My oldest brother asked what had happened, and here's how it goes. My parents had just pulled up to our trailer with the money order for rent. When they did, though, they caught Mr. Doll backing up the farming vehicle against the door, the only exit in that trailer. My mother went into full protection mode knowing her 2 children were still stuck inside. She confronted him immediately. Luckily, he backed away from the door, but he was still operating the vehicle. I believe she threatened him, and after they had an exchange of words, he whipped the vehicle around fast and aggressively close to my mother. He even almost ran her over with it. My parents were obviously bewildered about what they had just witnessed. They didn't know what to do, so they called the police. When the police showed up and my parents explained the situation to them, they said it was no use because we had no legal agreement of renting out the trailer. The officers shrugged it off, said there was nothing they could do in the end because no one was injured. Apparently, trapping 2 children inside a trailer that's a fire hazard isn't exactly illegal. We only spent one last night in that trailer. We no longer felt safe there. We packed up as many things in our car as we could, but unfortunately we didn't have the money to rent a moving truck for the rest of our furniture. We stored the belongings we took with us at my grandparents' house, and we rented a motel room. It was about a week later after this all happened when we tried going back for the rest of our belongings. We wanted no confrontation with Mr. Doll, so we showed up to the trailer at night. It was dark inside, and the porch light was off. My father and oldest brother went inside the trailer casually. Me, my mother, and my older brother were outside waiting in the car. It had been no less than 5 minutes when my father and oldest brother ran out of the trailer with speed I've never seen before. They hopped in the car and pulled out of there like some scene in an action movie. My mom became terrified and was demanding answers. Apparently, they went into the master bedroom first, which was an immediate right when you walked inside. They were just going to grab a box of paperwork we had to leave behind when we left. Out of the corner of their eye, though, they noticed something lying in the bed. Not just lying there asleep, but completely naked. It was Mr. Doll, and right beside him was a gun. We never went back into that trailer. We never recovered the rest of our furniture that had sentimental value. Was family members, living and deceased. It's been almost a decade since this all happened. My mother and I discuss it every now and then, but we're thankful that time is behind us. I can't help but wonder if all that abandoned furniture was the result of some other unfortunate family who had had to leave everything behind, or have it taken from them forcefully. Hello, I'm French, so I apologize in advance if there are any mistakes. As I just said, I live in France, and this story happened to me this summer, Just after lockdown ended, I was and am still 19 at the time. After the lockdown ended, I went to my grandparents to spend a few weeks. I got tested before, so there were no problems there. My grandparents live in a small city in the north of France, and they have a dog who's quite big. When I was really young, I lived at my grandparents for a year, and at that time the dog was only a puppy. Her name is Chippy in French, which kind of means little devil in English, but in a more affectionate way. Considering when I was living there I played with her a lot, we were both really close, and that will have its importance later. Two of my favorite hobbies are having long walks and jogging. Thus, every evening I was going out for a long walk with the dog. There's a track that follows a path through the forest, then there's a small hill, and on top of that a big place with lots of fields there. I run through there a lot, so I know the place. The air is fresh, and the view is quite stunning. So I was going there with the dog every day. It was also helping my grandparents to have her doing a lot of exercise. The first time we went there, nothing special happened. We just enjoyed our peaceful walk. It's about 6 to 7 kilometers, so basically an hour walk. The next day, when we arrived on top of the hill, in the field, it was probably around 10 p.m., but it was still some light because it's summer. There were 3 other people walking in the fields. They were all younger than me, probably about 15 or 16. I also noticed that they were smoking. My guess was that they used to come there so they couldn't be seen by their parents. We went past them. I greeted them and they greeted back. Once again, nothing special happened. For a whole week I did this walk around the same time, 10 p.m., and passed by those 3 guys with nothing special happening. It was all perfectly fine to me this way. The second week, as usual, I went for the walk with Chippy and arrived at the fields. There was only one of the 3 boys. He wasn't smoking this time though. When he saw me, I was at the entrance of the field just after the little hill climb. When he saw me, I was at the entrance of the field just a bit after the little hill climb, so the entrance of the forest was just behind me. He did a sign with his hand to catch my attention and asked if I had a lighter. Which I actually did have in my pocket. I told him sure, so he walked over to me, the hand in the pockets of his hoodie. When he started to come closer, for some reason I felt a shiver. It's crazy how sometimes your instinct knows there's a problem, but you don't listen to it because nothing looks weird to you. I handed over the lighter as he passed by. At that moment, my dog was staring at him. Then everything happened so fast. He did a really fast movement with his hand, coming from the hoodie, and I only could see something shining. I just had a reflex of throwing myself back, so hard that I fell down. I just realized that it was a knife he was holding, and he had just tried to walk up and stab me. What saved me was my dog, God bless her. When she saw the boy try to stab me, she jumped on him and he fell down. I immediately got up to my feet and heard something behind my back. From the entrance of the forest, I saw 2 guys wearing animal masks come running right at me. I assumed they were probably his 2 friends. In this moment, your brain acts for yourself. You don't think at all. And in this case, the answer he found was very simple. The other guy was still laying on the ground. I had just watched my dog mauling him and told her, "Run." I started jogging and she followed me. I heard the worst possible thing from the guy who got up as well. "Catch him. Don't let him go." At this moment I was totally terrified. I was just running. I was hearing them jogging behind me. All I could think was, how long will they follow me for? Who the hell are these people? This was the first time I was really happy to be a runner. I was clearly in better condition than those boys, and that totally saved me, because they chased me for what felt like an eternity. Fortunately, at the very end of the field, there's another entrance to the forest, and this time it's a descent with the road at the end. I could hear the steps of the 3 boys vanishing as I arrived at the end of the forest, though I never stopped running until I arrived at my grandparents' house and locked myself inside. I caught a big breath and gave a huge hug to my dog. I saw in her eyes that she totally understood what happened, and I had never been so happy to have her in my life. After that, I told everything to my grandparents. We called the police, but of course they didn't find anyone. I don't know what these guys wanted, but the animal masks kinda make me think they were some kind of Satanists or something. I really don't want to know either way. I still do long walks with Chippy the hero dog, but now I go a bit earlier, and to places with a lot more people around.